I added magical wands to Minecraft. There are 24 magical wands based on 7 elements. We have fire, water, electricity, air, earth, steel, and chicken. These 7 wands are available to anyone, while the remaining wands are patron exclusive. More on that later. So what exactly do the wands do? The fireball wand shoots a damaging fireball that sets the target on fire. If you actually hit a mob, the mob is set on fire, and if you hit solid blocks, it will just place some fire on the ground there. And it is worth mentioning that all of the wands in the pack, besides sort of this wind wand, do work on players. So, yeah, feel free to kill your friends with fireballs and lightning and stuff. The ice wand will shoot a ball of ice that travels rather slowly, but when it hits an area, all nearby mobs will get frozen in place for a short time. While frozen, you'll see that the mobs are not able to take damage, they're not able to run away, they are just stuck there. And this one is pretty effective at keeping mobs away from you, because when they're frozen, I mean, they can't get to you, so... Yeah, and then you could combine this with like the fireball or something, and yeah, mobs would just be burned to death. Pretty painful. By now you might have noticed that the fireball is actually coming a bit to the right and above me. This actually ends up lining up with the wand better and means that you don't end up getting blinded by like all the particles if they was straight down the middle, right? You can still see when you cast these fireballs. They do then end up landing very slightly to the right of where you're aiming, but with just a very slight amount of practice, you can get used to this difference. The lightning wand is a very effective weapon, much more than like the ice or the fireball. It shoots a fast-moving projectile that strikes lightning where it lands. So if it hits a mob is struck with lightning. If it hits the ground is struck by lightning. And due to the higher travel speed on this, you can end up hitting targets much easier, where like trying to hit this cow from like really far away with a fireball might be rather tricky. The wind wand shoots a gust of air that deals high knockback to mobs that are hit by it. They take a little bit of damage and then they go flying. And this one is really effective against mobs that are trying to, get to you because they can't if they're pushed way back. And as I mentioned earlier, this one doesn't work particularly well on players because it doesn't actually get to apply the motion, so I just bumped up the damage on it. So it does more damage to players than to mobs, but it does not send them back. That's actually because you can't run a motion calculation on a player to adjust their motion. Alright, then we have the Earth Wand. This one, when it's going to shoot like a thing of earth along the ground that then pops mobs up into the air, and then they'll take fall damage and die. And this does work on players, but of course they could like water bucket clutch or whatever to avoid damage. Oh, and this one can travel over terrain, so like it can go up or down blocks depending on what is needed. So yeah, it's going to be able to go across terrain. It cannot, however, go like through a wall. Like this. It will end up stopping if it gets to a wall like this, and it also cannot go off like a steep drop off, so you can see it did not continue going. Similarly, we have the Ore Wand. This one will shoot out a trail of gray particles that then turn into spikes that shoot up from the ground and then slowly disappear. While they are in the world, they can deal damage to mobs and players that walk into them. So if I was in survival mode, let's just, I guess, demonstrate that. Like, I can walk into this now, and then I'll start taking pretty major damage. But again, this one, while it can travel over terrain, will not go through blocks, and again, cannot go off of a drop-off like this, but it could traverse like a hill or an incline like that. And then finally, we have the Chicken Wand. This one is a rather silly one. It throws exploding chickens, and it has not that much of a cooldown, so you can cause quite the explosion of chaos, right? A lot of fun to mess around with. This one is a really rare core to get, because I'm not sure if you guys have seen this, But you get all of these wands from my More Bosses data pack. If you want to learn more about More Bosses, I have a playlist. There's a link in the iCard to the actual pack that will explain more details, but pretty much you have all of the recipes in game, right? And you can see that each of them needs a core. All of the cores can be crafted. You can see here are their recipes, but they're pretty expensive. And in the settings, I have another link actually in the iCards. There's a setting to disable all of the core recipes, right? So you can click that video to learn more about the config for the pack. But basically, bosses that spawn into the world can drop these cores that then you can use to craft the different wands in the pack. Pretty cool stuff. I really like how it turned out, honestly, because you'll occasionally run into a boss. It will throw crazy magical attacks at you, and you have to be really careful to avoid all of them. And then, of course, you're rewarded when you kill them by actually getting a magical wand. And a lot of the wands in the pack are pretty cool, pretty useful, fairly overpowered. Speaking of wands in the pack, as I mentioned earlier, there are 24 wands in the pack, and currently only 7 of them, the ones we just went over in the video, are actually available to non-patrons. So that means that if you donate $1 or more a month to me, you would get access to the Meteor Wand, the Flamethrower Wand, the Magma Wand, and then the Ice Spike Wand, the Water Wand, the Bubble Wand, and the Frost Wand. And then we saw the Lightning Wand, so you get the Thunder Wand and the Electric Wand, and then there's also the Air Wand, and then the Hurricane and Gust Wands, a Rock Wand, a Boulder one, then we have Steel, Anvil, Dripstone, and yeah, that would be it. So yeah, you get access to all of these, and there are some pretty cool ones, like this Ice Spike that throws a Ice Spike, or I mean, the Steel Wand is probably my favorite. Pulls crazy spikes out of the ground and then throws them all in a direction. So yeah, if you are wanting to gain access to all of these wands, you can do so by clicking the iCard in the top right. That will take you to my Patreon, and then again, a $1 or more donation gets you access to this pack, and of course, supports me. Well, that's all I got. See ya!